After this form.html, I have already created a form.js. I have already created this complete set of code. Let's see each line of code one by one. The first line of code we have document.getElementById by id submit button dot add event listener. Inside this add event listener, we have two arguments. One argument is click event and another one is a function. Let's go back to this first line of code. In this first line we have document. This document refers to the whole HTML page when the web page loaded in the browser. That is nothing but when we created this form.html using open with 5 server. When we use open with 5 server, the browser reads that HTML document and the browser creates a DOM is nothing but a document object model which is a tree like structure and contains object inside it. Each objects are also known as nodes. These nodes have separate HTML elements inside it. We can manipulate this DOM using JavaScript. That's why we are using this DOM. We are getting this document by JS, not by HTML. This document also refers to this HTML form.html as well. After that, we have get element by ID. The name itself suggests that get the element by using ID. Get the element. Element is nothing but a start tag, content in between them, and an end tag. For example, when we go to let's go to form.html, we can see this button. For example, we have button tag. This is a start tag. This is the content in between them. This is an end tag. This entire line is known as an element. We are getting this element using id submit button. That's what this form.js denotes. This denotes something but an id from the form.html, that is submit button. After that we have add event listener. Inside this add event listener we have two arguments. One argument is a click event, another one is a function. Let's see one by one. Click event is nothing but this tells the browser when this button is clicked, run some code. For example, if you click a submit button, it creates a table. If there is any field missing, it shows last name is missing, email is missing. That's what this click event is all about. After click event, we have function. This function contains the code we want to run when the button is clicked. Let's see what is happening inside the function one by one. After function, we have const fields equal to first name comma last name comma email. What is happening here? We are creating a list of array by the variable name as fields and giving a value as first name comma last name comma email. What is this first name last name email? These are the id from form.html. Let's go back to form.html. We can see this input tag. We are getting this id from this input tag first, like id equal to first name, id equal to last name, id equal to email. And let's go back to form.js. These are the IDs from this form. We are getting this ID to check whether this first name last name are entered or not. That's why we are creating a variable called fields. Okay, after that we are creating a variable name all valid and set this value as true. Why are we setting this value as true? Why are we giving boolean value? Because if the field first name last name email I have entered, let's set it as true, that is it is filled completely, so we need to create a table. If it is false, that's why we are assigning a false also. If the field was empty, we need to create an error. That's why we are setting all valid equal to false here. So in the end, if it is true, create a table. If it is false, create an error tag. Let's see one by one. After that, we have fields dot for each field. This field is nothing but the variable name we have used. Why we are using for each? We need to go to this array one by one. We need to loop through this array one by one. That's why we are using for each. After for each, we have field. This field represents each ID, first name, last name, email, etc. After that, we have arrow function. Inside this arrow function, we have const input equal to document.getElementById by ID field. Field is nothing but this ID. Okay. We are giving field as parameter inside this document. Why are we assigning this document.getElementById by ID field inside this input variable? Because we are giving access to our input box to check whether the field was filled or not. If it is filled, we need to create a table. If it is not filled, we need to create a error message. That's why we are assigning this value to this input variable. After that we have const existing error equal to input dot nest element sibling. In general, nest element sibling is nothing but the element after our input element, I mean input box. let, Let me show an example. Let's go back to form.html. Let me open with 5 server. For first name, the nest element sibling is nothing but this last name is the nest element sibling right after the first name. But in our form, we need to create this nest element sibling as an error. That's why we are giving input dot nest element sibling. Let me show. This is the nest element sibling for our input box. Let's go back to VS Code. So open the form.js. That's why we are giving existing. Why we are giving existing error as variable name? Because we need to check if there is already an error message or not. If it is there, we don't want to create any duplicate error message. Because it is already there, we do not want to create a new one. If it is not there, we want to create a new one. That's why we are this below if condition. Let's see one by one. Inside this if condition, we have input dot value dot trim. What is this input? Input is nothing but the variable name which has each field, so we can access that input box. After that we have value. Value is nothing but the value the user type inside this input box. Let me say for first name we are typing a value of Sam. That is the value represents. After that we have trim. Trim is nothing but a function which removes the space from beginning and end of the value. For example, if we have Sam, we do not want any extra space before and after that name. So we are removing that extra space. That's why we are using trim. After trim function, we have equal to quotation. Why we are using this? Because if the input field was empty, we need to create an error message. If the input field was filled, we need to create a table. If the condition is true, we need to create an error message. After that we have a nested if. Inside this nested if we have not equal to existing error or not equal to existing error dot classless dot contains error. This is nothing but we are double checking whether the error message is already there or not. If it is already there, we do not want to create a new one. That's why we are checking this. If the condition is true, we need to create an error message. After that we have const error span equal to document dot create element span. We are dynamically creating a span tag using JavaScript. In normally, if you want to create a span tag in HTML, we need to just type that name. It will create a start tag and end tag to it. But in JavaScript, you need to, if you want to dynamically create any tag, you need to type document dot create element. After that we have error span dot. Error span is nothing but a variable name for the span tag. Error span dot classlist dot add error. This is nothing but we are assigning an attribute, class attribute to this span tag. Why we are assigning a class attribute? Because we need to style this error message in any font, any colors, like that. That's why we are giving a class attribute to it and giving a name as error. So we can use this error this error name inside this style.css, and we can style this using dot error that inside that. Why we are giving class list? Because we can add n number of class to it. That's why we are giving that. After that we have error span dot test content equal to field is record. This is nothing but it shows that error. It shows the test content is nothing but it shows the content or message beside the input box, that is error message. In here this is an error message. If you want to create any variable, like any assigning any variable inside the in JavaScript, you need to give dollar symbol before that. So in JavaScript, if you want to assign any variable, you need to give dollar symbol, and before dollar symbol you need to type this symbol. This symbol is nothing but you can found near the no sorry above the tab button. You can find this in our keyboard. You can find this symbol. You need to click this symbol, I mean type this symbol and give this dollar field is record. That's how first name is recorded, it will be shown. Let's go back to browser. Let me show it to you. See, first name is record. This is the test content message. Test content message is nothing but we are assigning a content message to it. After that, we are having input dot insert adjacent element after it. We are giving a position to it. We need to adjacent in this form. We are near this input box. We are adjust using adjacent element means we are inserting this adjacent element, that is error message beside the input box. That's why we are giving insert adjacent element. If you want to give before the or after the input box, we can add insert before insert, and we can give the positions before begin, after begin, like that. Let's go back to VS Code. That's why we are using insert adjacent element. We are adjusting the error message to it, and we are giving the variable name to it, the error span variable name to it. That's how it will identify which statement should be given a adjust, which statement should be adjacent. After that, we are validating this form, all valid equal to, and we are assigning a boolean value to it. Why we are using this? Because we are validating if the input field was filled, the validation will be true, it will create a table. If the validation will, if the validation is false, we need to create an error message. That's why we are, else, why we are using this else statement? Because if there is already an error message there, we do not want to create a new error message. So we need to, if there is already existing error, and existing error dot class list dot contains error is already there, there is already an error message there, we need to remove that error message. So we are using existing error dot remove, because if there is already an error message, we do not want to again display an error message. That's why we are removing this error message. After that, we have if all valid, for all the field in first name, last name, email, if it is all true and all valid, we need to create a table. If it is not valid, we need to remove that table. That's why we are giving document dot get element table. We are using this table container. This is nothing but we are used in the form.html. Like inside this div, we are given an id called table container. Let's go back to form.js. So we are removing the table if the field was empty. Like if the input field was empty, we do not want to create a table. That's why we are removing that. After that, we have document dot get element by id cancel button dot cancel button. Cancel btn is nothing but an id name of cancel button, and add even listener click function. We are giving assigning function to it. This is nothing but if we, let's go back to browser. If we click cancel, it should remove all the error message, as well as the input field should be cleared. So the form should be as new as possible. That's why we are using cancel. Inside this function, inside this function, we have const form equal to document dot get element by id form page. We are giving a form id. Form page is nothing but a id of form, id of this entire form. So that's how it will refresh the page. Let's go back to form.js. After that, we have form.reset function. It will reset the whole form page. That's why we are using reset function. After that, we have document.query selector. Query selector is nothing but it select that all element which has error in it. That's why we are giving class name, I mean class attribute error inside this query selector. So it will, all the error message near the input box will be removed if we click cancel button. That's why we are using this. That's why we are also looping through this error span also. Like if there is already error also, we are double checking it using for loop, so we can remove the span tag also. That's why we are using this. After that, we have document dot get element by id table container. If there is if the input field was empty, I mean if the, sorry, not if the input field was empty, uh, if we click cancel button, the table should also get removed. That's why we need to remove the table also. That's why we are given document dot get element id. We are giving the table id, that is div id, table container to it, and we are giving inner html as empty string, empty quotation, because we need to remove that table. After that, we have function create table. We are creating a table dynamically using JavaScript. So we are assigning const first name equal to document dot get element by id first name dot value dot trim. This is nothing but we are trimming the first name and last name value inside the table. If we let's go back to browser, let me type a name gmail.com. See, the table has created. So if I click cancel button, the table should be removed. So we are allocating a space using this value is nothing but the value we are typing inside the input box, like first name input box, and we are trimming the spaces before and after the value. After that we have for same for const last name also same thing happening. For email also the same thing happening. For checkbox we are creating an array. Why we are creating an array? Because checkbox have three we have three checkboxes, right? So we need to create an array. It will be very easier to identify that. So we are creating an array. From this array we are using query select all, and we are using same name for every checkbox. So we are giving a name equal to skills. If it is check, we are mapping that element. Like if there is any one element is checked, we need to um, showcase that value inside the table. That's why we are using this. After that, we have const gender equal to document dot query. We are using query selector. Query selector only select the first statement. So the query selector will select this input. Inside this input, we have name equal to gender. For both the radio button, we have same name as gender. If it is checked, we need to either type male or female. That's why we are using this. After that we have const command. For that also same as first name and last name. We need to just will trim the value um, before and before and end. We need to remove that space. That's why that's what here happening. After that we have const table html. Inside this we are dynamically creating a table using this symbol, the symbol we discussed before. You can see the symbol above the tab button. uh, Inside this table tag we are tr is nothing but a table row, th is nothing but a table head. We are creating this table head as first name, uh, and table we are giving table data. We need to fetch the table, right? Like we are dynamically creating this table, we are fetch the id. So that's why we fetch the id. The id is in variable format, right? That's why we are using dollar sign. For all the thing we are using that. In checkboxes you can see dot join. We are joining a comma in between the checkbox values. That's why we are using join in checkbox. After that we have document dot get element by id table container dot inner html equal to table html. This is nothing but we are denoting this table html. Inside we are creating a table in JavaScript. So we are using inner HTML nothing but creates a dynamic creates a table. Uh, instead of test content we can use inner HTML. Like inner using inner HTML we can create a table. We can create a start tag and end tag inside it. That's why we are assigning this table HTML to the inner HTML. That's it.